Greetings my little guzzlers. We're going to make some traditional Scottish oatcakes, and obviously we're going to need some oats. So I've got 450 grams of oatmeal here, and then the only other things you're going to need is about a generous tablespoon of melted butter, which is just melted in that pan, a teaspoon of bicarb, a teaspoon of salt, a bit more oatmeal to roll with, and that's all it is. So to my oats I'm going to add a teaspoon of bicarb and a teaspoon of salt. And now all we're going to do is just going to quickly mix these together, and then I'm going to pour the butter that's in there. Oh, forgot, you're going to need some boiling water. That's the only other ingredient. So I'm going to pour this butter into the oats. Now I've wasted, you might say, why did you melt it in a great big frying pan? Because we're actually going to cook the oatcakes in there, and we want it lightly buttered. Okay, so I'm just going to won't put it on there because that's hot still. And now what we want to do is add boiling water until we get a nice stiff dough. Now that's just boiled. What we don't want to do is make it too wet. Okay, so we're just going to gradually add hot water, boiling water, mixing it in until we can form a nice stiff dough. Now if you do end up putting too much water in, then you're just going to have to get some more oats. Now I've got my oven on. I want my oven on low at about 100 to dry it out, but we're going to cook them first in that pan, like I said, and you might want another little bit of butter just to keep the pan greased, if you like. Now oatcakes have been around in Scotland for centuries. They've certainly documented back in times of the Romans, and it's highly probable they were around before then. Oatcakes were essentially like the bread of the north, if you like. Wheat didn't grow very well in Scotland because of the damp climate. Every time I've ever been to Scotland, which ain't that many times, it's always rained. But anyway, it's not conducive. I'm not sure I'm going to want any more water in that. I'm not putting my hands in there at the moment because I can feel that's very hot. So, like I say, wheat didn't grow very well, so they didn't have bread in what the traditional wheaten sense, but they would have used oats and they would have used barley to make bread or oatcakes. So I'm just going to let this cool a little bit. Got itchy nose. And then we're going to get our hands in. Now we'll give my hands a wash and we'll give them in there, and we're going to squeeze that into a ball, and then we're going to roll it, and it's up to you what shapes you want to do. I'm going to use quite a large cutter and make mine about that size. You're going to want a baking tray to go in that oven when that oven's up to temperature. I'm just sort of kneading it as such into a ball. Okay, it's a little bit sticky, but not too sticky. And like I say, all we're going to do is to help us roll it, and what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to divide that into two, and I'm going to roll separately. Is that we just take some oatmeal. I've got some finer oatmeal here, which just going to lay it on there, and then I'm going to take one of those balls, and what we do is we gradually flatten it a little bit. It can start splitting up, that doesn't matter. We just glue it back together, and then we roll it out. It's about 1/4 inch thick. Okay, it's up to you how thin you want them, but they are quite fragile. So I'm saying, like, these are like the mainstay of Scottish cuisine, if you like. In about 13, sort of the late 1350s. It's quite tough, by the way, cutting through these oats with this cutter. This writer, Jean Lamel, talked about nuns in Scotland who were making what seems to be perhaps the earliest form, or one of the earliest forms of oatcakes, or descriptions of one anyway, little pancakes, rather like communion wafers. Not quite sure I'd call these communion wafers. So I've put my pan back on the heat, we're on a low to medium. These will burn very easily, okay? And like I say, you want it lightly buttered, so we just place our oatcakes into there, and we're going to want to keep turning them quite regularly. Being careful that they don't catch on the bottoms, and like I say, we want to do it so they start to brown. We finish them off by transferring them onto a baking tray and then putting them in the oven at 100 until they're sort of dried out. But we're not actually cooking them in the oven, we're doing the cooking in here. I've got one batch there ready to go in the oven. Adding a little touch of butter every now and again, and you can see how some of them, it then starts, if you're not careful, starts frying them a little bit. You can tell when they're sort of almost done because they start firming up, getting crispy on the outside, you know, they're getting firmer on the inside. These are probably a little bit thicker, so if you buy oatcakes, they know normally the commercial ones you get a lot thinner than this. I don't know quite how they do it, but you know, these can be quite brittle, they can be quite crumbly, so slightly thicker just makes your life a little bit easier. So like I say, I'm just turning them regularly. That had about 6 turns, possibly more. And when, like I say, when it looks like they've sort of firmed up, they're not sort of getting any firmer, and they're just starting to get a little bit too dark brown, that's when I'm whipping them out. So I'm going to put them all in the oven together. So I've just got them 4 there to do, them just to finish off, put them all in the oven, and then we'll, once they've dried, we'll do a little tasting. And then here we are. Here's our traditional Scottish oatcakes. Now this one's a little bit of a, you know, last bit that was left. So let's have a taste. So they're nice and dry and crisp. Tastes a little bit more buttery than I generally would get from oatcakes, you know, the commercial ones you buy. Whether that's simply because they weren't really fried in butter, but there was butter in the pan. But not typically the thing you'd have on its own. Have it with some butter or spread or cheese, or even with soup. You're definitely getting that sort of salty sweetness of butter. Getting crumbs everywhere. But what else can I say? Traditional Scottish oatcakes.